Hey there, creepy peeps. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, welcome back. If you are returning, it's Women in Horror Month, and I really haven't done anything for it. Yep, I realized that I really haven't done anything for Women in Horror Month on my channel. So yeah, we're gonna do something today, even though it's towards the end of the month. It's fine. We can still celebrate, can we not? So I thought I would share with you 5 movies and 5 books that I think kind of exemplify the spirit of Women in Horror Month that maybe don't get talked about as much or get enough love. So speaking of things that I feel like don't get as much love, the first movie I want to recommend to you is MFA. MFA is a rape revenge film that follows an art student who taps into a rich source of creative inspiration after accidentally killing her rapist. She then turns into an unlikely vigilante, avenging other girls whose attackers walked free. So this came out around the same time as Revenge, which is still a really good movie, and you should absolutely check out Revenge if you haven't seen it. But I feel like the hype for Revenge like way overshadowed MFA, and I feel like people just kind of like ignored it or didn't even know it existed. I thought MFA was like such a clever spin on the rape revenge subgenre, and I hate that it's even a subgenre really, but if we're gonna have this subgenre, I want stuff like MFA. So if you liked Revenge and you haven't yet watched or even heard of MFA, please go check it out. It is so good. I'm gonna go ahead and alternate here. So let me talk about a book now. So the first book I wanna recommend to you is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. Probably said that wrong. Which is set in modern day Seoul and follows Young Hae, a part-time graphic artist and homemaker whose decision to stop eating meat after a bloody nightmare about human cruelty leads to devastating consequences in her personal and familial life. And actually, this isn't too much of a spoiler, in the book she actually technically goes vegan. She gives up all animal foods or animal derived foods and all animal products, period. So in reality, she actually goes vegan. But even though like the summary makes it out to be that like the whole point of this is to talk about cruelty and why everyone should go vegan, I promise really it's kind of just like a footnote in this book. Really, it only briefly touches on the cruelty shown to animals because of the food industry and fashion industry. So what's interesting about this book is it's told in 3 parts from 3 different POVs, none of which are Young Hae's. So the book is really about Young Hae trying to establish her own identity, which is interesting because it's told through the eyes of 3 other people that aren't her. So you're seeing like how her change, like I said, like her trying to make herself a better person is seen through the eyes of these 3 different people. And it's not that long of a read. It's quite short actually. So if you want to get your hands on it, I highly recommend it. It's really good. I love this book. The next movie I want to talk about is Jennifer's Body. A movie I would think most of you are familiar with at this point. The movie is about a newly possessed high school cheerleader who turns into a succubus and starts killing her male classmates. I feel like this movie gets a little more love each Women in Horror Month. And I'll admit, I was also victim to like the blind dislike of this movie when it first came out. I feel like most people just didn't get it, thought it was made for male viewers, and or disliked that Megan Fox was in it, or like a combination of all 3 of those things. But honestly, if you're one of those people out there that hasn't seen this movie since it first came out, you need to give it a rewatch. Keep in mind the fact that it's written and directed by women, which is something that I think, at least when it first came out, that I remember was not talked about a lot, or I didn't know that when I saw that. I feel like that information wasn't made readily available to me. Obviously it was readily available to me because we had the internet, but I feel like the real love for the movie started after the Me Too movement, because watching Jennifer get sacrificed by a whole bunch of men kind of just hit different after that. The next book I want to talk about is The Invited by Jennifer McMahon, which follows Helen and Nate, who move out to rural Vermont to build their own house from scratch. But they find out the land they're building on has a dark history. That's just a really quick summary. There's a whole lot more going on in this book, and it's not just from the point of view of Helen. There's another character, Olive, who lives in the town that Helen and Nate moved to and is interested in their land for another reason. But the main thing that you have to know is this movie has to do with witches a little bit, which I love. The land that the Helen and Nate live on is actually cursed because a woman a long time ago, Hattie Breckenridge, was killed for witchcraft. But what I really love about the book is Helen as a character, because she is a history teacher in the book. So she's very interested in history. So of course, as soon as she learns that there's some sort of dark side to the land that they've just bought, she wants to know everything about it. And as she delves deeper and deeper into Hattie's history, she starts collecting like physical pieces of her story and her descendants' story. And it kind of opens the door a little bit. Like, it gets a little paranormal. It kind of like opens the door to their spirits coming through. And it's I mean, if you want to like think of it this way, I thought it was like a huge metaphor. Yes, like in terms of like women's rights and things like that, we're building on top of what the women who came before us already laid down. Does that make sense? I could like go on and on about that in this book. I mean, I don't know, but it's really good, so you should definitely read it. The next movie on my list that I want to talk about is Assassination Nation, which is probably the least like a horror movie on this list, but takes place in the aftermath of a malicious data hack which exposes the secrets of the residents of Salem. Chaos descends and four girls must fight to survive while coping with the hack themselves. I feel like this is one of those movies you either love it or you really hate it. To me, this is kind of like, it's almost like in the same vein as like what Black Christmas tried to do, but just in my opinion, Assassination Nation did it way better. Like, it doesn't pull any punches, and you know from the get-go that it's going to be in your face and it's not going to hold anything back, which I think is the right thing to do. I hate to compare it so much to Black Christmas, but I feel like if Black Christmas was more upfront about that it like wasn't gonna hold anything back, I think people would have been a little bit more okay with it, because, or at least more people would have been okay with it, because you know that going in. And when Assassination Nation opens, you know exactly what you're in for. So it's like, at that point, if you continue to watch and you get offended by something, that's your own doing, because you were warned. Next book I want to talk about is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. So the book takes place on a fictional island where annually young men ride dangerous man-eating water horses akin to like the Kelpie sort of myth, like demon water horses, in a race for prize money, of course. So the novel takes place from the point of view of two young people, Sean, who wants to win the race to get the money to buy his beloved water horse back, and Puck, who is the first girl to enter the competition in the history of the race and needs the money to support her brothers. Yeah, I know you might be thinking, hey, that doesn't sound all that scary. Demon water horses, what? It actually is really scary in the book, and honestly, I would love for this to be adapted into a movie. I think it would do so well. I actually, at UT in my screenwriting class, I actually, instead of coming up with my own movie, I decided to do an adaptation, and I did an adaptation of this. I have no idea what happened to that file with that screenplay on it, but I did do it. There's of course some romance to be had in this book between Puck and Sean, but it's really sweet, and it's kind of minimal. Like, it's not the main like conflict or plot in the book, which I like. So I'm like, you know, like some romance is okay, and you know, if it's like, if there's something you want to read that has some scary elements to it, definitely has some action, it has like some minimal romance where the whole plot isn't surrounding the romance. The Scorpio Races, Maggie Stiefvater. The next movie I want to talk about is Happy Death Day. I know, this is definitely a more well-known one just because it's more recent, like it's still, you know, in people's heads. But I feel like, I just feel like this movie doesn't get talked about enough during Women in Horror Month, and I just think it should be. Y'all probably know the plot. It follows Tree, who is murdered on her birthday, only to have that day repeated over and over until she finds and kills her murderer. I love Tree as a character specifically because she starts off as this stereotypical blonde sorority bitch. It's a total stereotype, and it's one that us horror fans are used to seeing oft before like the halfway mark in a movie. But Tree not only uses her apparent unlimited lives to solve her murder, but to take a look at herself and her actions and grow into a better person. And it's like, how many times do you get to see a character like her, how she starts in the beginning of the movie, have that arc? I feel like in horror, it's almost unheard of for characters like that to, and like, except maybe like more recently, but you know what I mean. The next book I want to talk about is Vampire Kisses by Ellen Schreiber. Hopefully I said her last name right, probably not. This is just the first book in the series. The rest of them are right here, these ones on the bottom. The series follows teenage goth Raven Madison, who is a misfit in her polo-wearing ordinary town. When the creepy abandoned mansion in town finally gets new residents, rumors start to spread that the occupant is a vampire. If you're thinking, Vicky, this sounds like a teen paranormal romance. I'm not gonna lie to you, it is, but hear me out. Out of all of the teen paranormal romances that I've read, and I've read a lot, I will just fully admit that here, I read a lot, this is one of the best ones. Over the course of the series, Raven grapples with whether or not she actually wants to become a vampire. I mean, I'm sure you could tell already that the resident of the mansion is a vampire, okay? And he's a hot vampire at that, obviously. He doesn't sparkle though. So this is like regular vampire rules here. I just want to point that out before anybody just immediately writes off this book. It's normal vampire rules. But I love that Raven gets to see the dark side of vampirism, and that it's not this kind of like all 100% romantic, lovely ideal to spend eternity with the person you love the most. She has to grapple with like the pros and cons of this. And I think it's like, it's realistic as you can be when it's a book about vampires. They really make you earn it in this series, and it's quite easy to read. I don't know if you can tell how like thin the books are here. This is just the mass market version of it. It's the only one I have a mass market version of. The rest of them are all hardcovers, and they're quite thin. So they're really easy to read. It's a really quick series, and there is like 8 of them, 9 of them. The last movie I want to mention is another fairly popular / recent-ish one. But like Happy Death Day, I want to talk about it specifically for Women in Horror Month, because I feel like this one also doesn't get talked about as much during this time. So it is Evil Dead, the 2013 remake of The Evil Dead. The remake follows in the same fashion. A bunch of kids go out to a cabin in the woods, find a scary book, read from it, and then the undead descend. I really love that for a while the movie's like protagonist you think is David, Mia's brother, and he is for all intents and purposes. Like the movie follows him for the majority of the movie. But I love that it turns its focus onto Mia once she is brought back from her like deadite state. It's a great metaphor on one hand just for her like getting clean, because they all go out to the cabin so she can like quit drugs cold turkey. And of course that, you know, for a while they think that she's just going through withdrawals before they realize that actually something scary is going on. I mean, she fights she literally fights the monster / drug addicted version of herself in one of the most epic horror movie scenes where it's raining blood. I mean, come on. It's a badass turn of events just when you're thinking that David is gonna be the Ash of this remake. Just kidding, it's Mia. The last book I want to recommend is another series, and one that I've talked about periodically on this channel, and that is the Sweep series by Kate Tiernan, which follows Morgan, who finds out she's a witch by blood and possesses powerful magic. This and the TV series Charmed are the literal foundation of me becoming the Wiccan that I am today. We'll just go ahead and put that out there. Aside from the supernatural elements in the series, the Wiccan / witchcraft aspects of this are pretty damn spot on, which is it's so refreshing. It's so refreshing. Morgan is a super realistic character. She's far from perfect, but that's what makes her more relatable. And in terms of the romance in the series, which if you have read it, you know there is some. I like that Morgan doesn't fall for anyone very quickly or get over them very quickly, which also just adds to the realism. I've read so many YA like romance novels where it's just like completely unrealistic, or the people like fall in love, like madly in love in like 48 hours time. Does not happen here. This is another one, like the books are quite short. If you can see, the series is right here. These are all of them. There are 15 total, sorry, 15 total. Highly recommend. This and Vampire Kisses are probably the hardest to get a hold of, I would imagine, because they're a little bit older than the other ones that I mentioned. But that's all I had for you. I just wanted to do something for Women in Horror Month before it was over for this year. But kind of like how Halloween is every day, I feel like Women in Horror Month is every day, am I right? I want to really quickly thank my creepy patron peeps for their support of my channel. If you want to find out the perks to being a creepy patron peep yourself, you can follow that link in the description. And if you just watched this video and you liked it, give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out. And if you're lurking and haven't subscribed yet, why haven't you? Clearly I'm very articulate. You should totally subscribe. I post videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can ring that notification bell down there to be notified every time I post a video. It kind of works. It's 50-50. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay strange. Bye!